Hello, everybody. Hello, and welcome to Career Expert Roundtable. I am Bill, the company's expert, and as always, with me is Abby from Life Work Balance. And we are doing another collaboration where we're doing an interactive live stream where you can ask questions and we will see the questions. And this is going out live on my channel and Abby's channel. So wherever you are watching this from, you should be able to get in the chat and let us know what you're wondering about, what you're struggling with, and we can respond to that and try and help you out. The topic of today's episode is why you didn't get the job, what they won't tell you. So we're going to be kicking things off by exploring that. So Abby, why don't you take us away? Hello, by the way. Greetings.
Yes. Hello. And really, we've all been there. We feel like we've nailed the interview. We feel confident, and then we don't hear anything. The ghosting that has been happening a lot is so frustrating. So if anyone is currently listening right now and has joined in, let us know if you've ever been ghosted during the interview process, because
it's really become the standard too. That's what everyone can almost expect.
Yeah. And sometimes we don't hear anything. So we've been ghosted. That really sucks. Or worse, we receive this really generic, vague rejection email where it doesn't give us any information about what might be going on behind the scenes. So I think that's something that we can talk about today, in addition to just any questions that come through the chat. So this is hopefully going to be very interactive. So bring any questions you have, whether it's related to our topic about the hidden reasons behind job rejections or not. And Bill and I will do our best to answer any of those questions.
Yeah, or you can also just let us know your experience if it's kind of similar to what we're talking about. If you've experienced something similar, and we will react to it or talk about it anyway.
Well, I had someone comment on one of my posts on YouTube, and they were saying that they had applied to 31 jobs in the last 2 weeks, or it was probably a longer period than that, but 31 jobs, and it only heard back from 2. So it is a pretty big discrepancy, and it's going to take a lot of effort on the job seekers' part to apply to jobs to then get some responses, just because, like you said, it's kind of becoming the norm for people to get ghosted or have no response when it comes to submitting applications. So
I'm very much in the minority. I would actually not want to hear back if it's a no, because my attitude is just keep moving forward. Instead of stopping and waiting for the phone to ring and see if you get a response, just always be thinking about the next opportunity. But I know that I'm in a tiny minority. Most people want to hear conclusively a yes or no on every job they apply to. And even if that means the vast majority of them are no's, it's a rejection of some kind, people still want that kind of closure, in it.
And I'm that kind of person. I want even just a generic email is better to me than no response. I would rather get, more candidates who are more highly qualified, so we've decided to move forward with them, or thank you for your application. You get in most cases, when you submit an application, you get a confirmation email that your application has been received. So why not just get an email letting you know where you are in the process, or if they're not moving forward with you, then you can know, I'm not going to waste my time thinking about that. Or if I really wanted that job and I thought I was the best fit for it, then maybe I could be a little bit more intentional about networking or finding someone who works at the organization or reaching out to a recruiter. That's one of the things when I was working with the federal government, it's a whole thing right now in the current situation. But when I was working with the federal government, the way that it worked was that there was a specific HR person who was dedicated to our department for hiring. And so even though I was somewhat in charge of the hiring for our department, I specifically worked with an HR person. And they told me that they would love it if people reached out to them and, asked, what can I do better with my application? If they get rejected, sending a follow-up email saying, thanks so much for letting me know that I'm not moving forward in the process. Do you have any feedback or insights for me? Now, I think that person in the big scheme of the world of HR and recruiting is probably in the minority. I think there's a lot of recruiters and HR people who have this mindset of I've got all these other things that I'm working on. I've got these other people that I've got to contact and coordinate with. So I'm not going to spend my time giving specific feedback to one person who's not a good fit for the job anyway, but might as well try. There's no harm in reaching out, especially if it's a job that you're really, really excited about or enthusiastic about.
Yeah, and I've always wondered. Somebody, actually, I'm going to put this up on the screen. Art Sim just asked what I was thinking a moment ago, which was, where is it here? It's such a terrible time hearing from that. No, sorry, my mistake. Here we go. Here, it's so easy for HR to send a templated rejection email. Yeah, I've always wondered that. I mean, in this day and age of ATS, everything is encountering ATS, like you said, Abby, it will send a email acknowledging receipt of your application.
Mhm.
I don't understand why most people still don't receive like a a rejection or an accept, like, some kind of result email, because presumably it's just a matter of turning on a setting and saying, like, if you don't get accepted, then that email goes out. Do
Yep.
you have any insight into maybe why that's not happening?
Well, that's exactly the process.
Hmm.
All of the applicant tracking systems that I have worked with, which is not a huge range, but of the ones that I have worked for, all of them have had this setting where you can create a templated email where it automatically inserts based off of like the code that you put in the email, the person's name, the job they applied to, and it's generic, just saying there are other candidates who are more highly qualified for the position. We're moving forward with them. Thank you so much. We'd love to keep your resume or application around for further consideration. We'll be in touch if a job, meets your needs. So it's not hard. It is totally something that if I were a, betting person, I would say every applicant tracking system has that capability.
Yeah, you would think so. So it's more of a conscious decision not to send that out, maybe to keep their options open or something. Like, is that, like, I don't know why, what would be the motivation to not send out those emails one way or another?
I don't know. I mean, yes, maybe you have to click an extra button to like send the email. Because when I worked with these applicant tracking systems, everyone would apply. A lot of our systems would then rank people based off of the like kind of criteria that we put into the system. And so everyone who didn't meet qualifications, we would put them into not moving forward. And then you have to click an extra button to say send the like rejection email. But it's that simple. Maybe you
Yeah.
can spend some extra time making it not as vague and generic, and maybe you want to put a little bit more niceties in there, but in most cases it's literally just saying send the reject email. So it should not be as hard as it is for people to receive any communication about the status of their application. Now, going back to the like federal job thing, when I worked with the federal government and even applied with the federal government, sometimes it would be like 3 months before you would hear back from someone in HR. So maybe that's something that's going on, is it's just a very long, drawn out, bureaucratic internal process that's taking them a long time. But even then, I've applied to many jobs in the past that had complete radio silence, no response about if I wasn't a good fit, or they didn't just like decide to fill the job, or they filled it with an internal person. Like, you just are not getting as many responses as you would assume.
Yeah, that's kind of puzzling why that's the case.
Mhm.
That's a terrible lesson left. Still healing from that experience, I guess. I don't know if you had any reaction to that. I don't know what your experience was on that.
Yeah,
Working
I
for
would say probably not specific
Hmm.
to working with the federal government, but with terrible bosses. And I feel like that could be a whole live stream. We could go off on a tangent about
Oh
what
yeah,
terrible
yeah,
bosses.
terrible boss. I'm sure everybody's got their tales to tell
Yes,
about that.
yes, maybe
Um,
that should be our topic for the next one we do.
there
Uh,
you go. Be a
but yeah, so
6 hour
then
live stream. Yeah.
right. And hearing everyone's experiences, but Art also said I applied to a state agency and they said I didn't pass the minimum qualifications. I followed up with an email asking where I fell short. They never responded. Yeah. And, that's one of the things where like, okay, you got the initial reject email. Now what? You didn't get any response after you kind of follow up. And I would say it goes back to that mindset of like, I don't have time for that. I think that's probably what recruiters and the HR people and the hiring team are probably thinking when it comes to responding to those types of emails. I, as a recruiter, and I recognize this is a bias that I have, and Bill, you and I have talked about this a couple of times. As a recruiter, I personally would like to think that I would respond to those emails. That if I'm getting those messages in, if someone's taking the time to respond back to me and it's not super defensive, it's not accusatory of like, well, I do have these minimum qualifications, I demand that you tell me why I'm not qualified for it. I feel like the common decency that people are allowed is a response about why they might not have been selected. Maybe I say that someone is not qualified because they don't have a certain type of experience, or we're looking for someone with a certain certification or years of experience and they didn't have that. It shouldn't be that difficult for me to respond with that. And I also
I think
recommend
there's
it
some
with my
I think there's some real barriers for a lot of people. I think first of all, most recruiters are probably overworked. They don't have a lot of extra time to do optional things. The other thing I know as a hiring manager is that you just don't want to get into it with people, because if you've ever done this, you probably have had some bad experiences where, it's a very touchy subject. It's very emotionally charged. People are upset because they were rejected. And the fear is that it's going to turn into an argument. If you say like, well, I felt that you had this and you had this, but you were a little short in this area, and you get people challenging you on that. And then it just turns into an exchange. And it's like, not only do I not have time for this, but like it's not really going to be very productive, and it's unpleasant. So there's that. And also I would go a step further and say, maybe I'm a bit cynical here, but I'm saying that a lot of people will not give you the keys to, hack their ability to determine if you're what they're looking for. They won't say, well, what we're really looking for here is this, and I know I didn't ask you about that, but I was hoping that you would independently volunteer that you had this, because once you say that, it's like, okay, that's now revealed and the cat's out of the bag. And that the next candidate, knowing that you said this because it's now been posted online in a form, they will go out of their way to say, oh, I know I have this, right? And they're hacking your little system there. So it's not to your advantage as the decision maker to sort of disclose all of this. Yeah. Now, I don't know how often that happens, but I suspect it happens some of the time.
Yeah, well, and especially for recruiters, like if someone has the title of recruiter, they probably have a lot of cases that they're managing to try to hire someone. They're not necessarily the expert in the job that they're hiring for, and they're truly working with a defined set of parameters that they've been given from a hiring manager. So they're this middle person who just has to make some quick decisions on if this person appears to be a fit or not. So they may not even have the official capacity to like override the system when they've been given these strict things that they have to work within. And so it is so tricky, because I think everyone could say, well, which is what I just said earlier, everyone is allowed this common decency of getting a response to an email. And, I'm sure there have been emails that all of us haven't replied to. There are many that come through to me that are people trying to sell me stuff. And I'm like, I'm just deleting it. I'm not even responding to this.
You get that endorphin rush when you hit like delete, or block or something. It feels so good. I got my own back. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's one of those things where we just can't take it personally. We have to know that if we got the no, we put in some effort to respond to the email, we are hit with another no, either in the form of an email that says no or a lack of response, that there's likely something better out there for us anyway. And not to dwell on it too much, which is much easier said than done, especially when you feel like you've applied to hundreds and maybe thousands of jobs and you keep getting these rejection emails. But really it comes down to that like internal ability to kind of compartmentalize and say, okay, this is not a me problem. I'm going to move past this specific email string or job application process and go to the next one.
Art Sim receives some bonus points for commenting that right there.
Yes. And it looks like we got some people confirming, like, yes, we need a 6-hour live stream on terrible bosses and what.
Yeah, exactly. Well, yeah, exactly. I mean, I don't know how productive that would be, but it would be maybe fun for us. I don't know.
Well, and I guess let's address it really quick. So if there's a terrible boss, Bill, what do you suggest they do?
Well, the problem is if it's a boss, a couple of things. Number one, I think your hands are tied to a degree. Number two, it boils down to your philosophy of like how you handle that. And to be honest, like my approach for that is not to fight back too hard. It would just be to go, like, if you're not appreciated or you're not valued, or you're not respected, go find a place where you are valued and respected. I mean, but that's more of my sort of opinion on that. I know that isn't shared universally. I know that if there's a lot at stake, if you have a really good thing going and it's being spoiled by one bad person, then it obviously might make sense to try and fight back and sort of curb that person's behavior. But I mean, you could really go down that rabbit hole. We could like get into that. That's a whole like lecture in itself, I think.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, you have two options. You either stay or you leave. And if you leave, you start looking for a new job. You might, just do the bare minimum to get by. And then you find a new job. Maybe you hate it so much you quit without having anything lined up. And then you spend your, full-time hours doing a full-time job search. And then if you stay, there are other ways to handle that too. So
how much do baseball bats retail for these days? Like those like aluminum bats, they make like a nice ting, it's like, get one of those, write their name on the side, bring it to work, stand outside their office and just rub it and say soon, and then there you go. Things sort of take care of themselves after that point, one way or another, I imagine.
I don't know if they have these near you, but there are rage rooms. That's kind of like the room of where you pay
that's awesome.
X number of dollars to go into a room and just break stuff. Maybe that's what we need is some rage.
That's an actual thing.
It is an actual thing. Yep. So it's like they have old glass things that you can swing and hit and throw, and you're just in a room that has debris everywhere because you're just.
I've never even heard of that before.
Yep.
I guess that's an American thing. That would not surprise me to learn that's an American thing. I don't know.
Because we are
handguns
the most unhappy in the job market. And having a bad boss is the number one reason why people leave their jobs. So your relationship with your supervisor determines if you choose to stay or leave in most cases. Okay. So anyway.
I like the rage room thing. I wasn't ready to leave that, but I understand that we probably should. Okay. We got a few more comments here. So I usually get rejection emails and study and hardly get any interviews despite 1 year full-time experience and 2 internships. We are going to get to this very shortly. Now, somebody else asked something similar. We were talking about rejection emails. Somebody asks how to get acceptance emails. So we should shift our discussion to that very shortly, but I just want to get through some of these other ones here. Art says, but I framed it in a way that I want to grow and want to be successful with the organization, but I understand the possibility of argument. Yeah, it doesn't matter how you frame it. Like the intention behind it is what matters. And they know from previous experience, I would suspect that it can turn into this or it could turn into that. And they just don't want to get involved. So listen, the bottom line is don't like Abby just said, don't take it personally. It's just the practical aspects of this that interfere. And a lot of recruiters just don't have the time to engage one-on-one with like lots of people that got to know. If everyone got to know, wanted to have a conversation about it, it just wouldn't be practical. So,
Yep. And it's just something that we've got to expect as a part of the job search process. If it were as easy that we were to apply for a job, our very first one, and immediately get the job, then unemployment rates would be much lower than they currently are. The amount of turnover would be there's a lot of factors that go into it. So one of the things we just have to understand when it comes to the job search process is that there will be rejections. We have to expect that. We can't take it personally. And we've got to see it as like a reframe of it's not completely rejection. It's not about us personally. It's more just redirection. So this job, this role, this organization maybe wasn't the right fit. We're being redirected in a direction that's a much better fit for us long-term.
Yes, I agree with that wholeheartedly. Okay, so Alukik, if that's how you say that, is sent a couple of posts on the same topic, how to get acceptance emails. Like, how do you get accepted with things? This was the other one. Maybe let's see if we can tackle this. I usually get rejection emails, hard to get any interviews despite 1 year of full-time experience and 2 internships. It doesn't matter like what you have, regardless of what you have, you're going to be rejected some of the time. Like it's just inevitable,
Yep. And I would say that if you are not getting any interviews, you're not getting any response to your applications that you have been submitting, then there's probably something going on with your resume and your application strategy. So if you're having zero response or you're getting very few, it probably has to do with your resume and your application. So if the applications have supplemental questions, you want to make sure that you're very intentional about how you're answering those supplemental questions. We use them when I was a recruiter. I use those supplemental questions as a way to filter people in and out. So we've got usually questions that will indicate minimum qualifications. Sometimes the supplemental questions are so minimal. It's like, do you have a driver's license? Do you have the ability to work in this country? That might be it. So they might not be using the supplemental questions to filter people in and out. But if you notice the questions are a little bit more specific, like how many years of education or experience do you have? What type of education do you have? Do you have experience being a supervisor? Yes or no? If those are more specific types of questions, then those questions will likely be used to filter people in or out. If they're very vague, if they're like asking the bare minimum or there are no questions, then that's where your resume is going to be kind of the linchpin. It's going to either get you in the door or out of the door. A applicant tracking system, if they're using one where it reviews the resume from a computer perspective, it's going to be looking for keywords and phrases from the job posting that match to your resume. So use a generative AI program like Grok or ChatGPT to analyze your resume to the job posting. Say, based off of this job posting, what are 10 bullet points that I should include on my resume? You can ask it a bunch of different questions, but you want to tailor your resume to the job posting. If it gets through the computer and a person looks at it, the person, whether it's a recruiter or a hiring manager, they will likely spend 6 seconds reviewing your resume for the first time. They're going to do a very brief scan of your resume to determine if you meet minimum qualifications or not. If it doesn't look from the first 6 seconds that you meet minimum qualifications, your resume is getting tossed into the no pile. So you need to ensure that you are able to communicate your value and how you meet minimum and most of the preferred qualifications for a job in your resume and in the application process. So long story short, if you're not getting any responses, if you're not getting any emails, it's probably your resume and your application strategy.
Yeah, like I want to second what Abby said. If you're applying online and they go out of their way to ask you specific questions during the application, like Abby used the example of like, do you have a driver's license? But they can ask you like a yes, no question, do you have this qualification, or do you have at least 6 years experience in this, something like that. 99% of the time, as far as I think, those are used specifically to filter you out. So if you answer any of those questions with a no, you're essentially disqualifying yourself, and that's the end of the application process for you. Your resume doesn't go any further. So if they do give you those specific questions, make sure that you answer them favorably, assuming, of course, it's the truth, right? Because that's probably why they're broken out like that. It's just like, this is a deal breaker. It's a yes or no. And if you don't answer favorably, that's it. The whole process is now terminated for you. So yeah, those are very important. That's why they do that.
Yep. And a similar question related to this that PD put in the very bottom of our comments was, should we fill out the application even when submitting a resume? Sometimes I do and sometimes I don't. I would say it depends. Sometimes they'll say upload a resume in lieu of filling out the application, because the application might just be copying and pasting things from your resume. If it doesn't say that, then I would spend the time copying and pasting. Now, it's where it gets a little bit tricky, because maybe you don't need to upload your resume. I would still upload your resume to an application platform, because they're probably going to use that document to send to hiring managers or people who will be looking at your application. I bet the application portion is probably used by the computer system to determine fit or qualification for the role, and then also the recruiter. But you want to make sure that you do everything if it is there, just because I imagine that there's a reason why they're giving you the option to upload, and then they also have the application. And
yeah, as a general rule, you would do what they ask. So if they ask you to do this and that, for maximum odds of them accepting you, you would try and do it. Like, you don't really get points for disobeying what they're asking you to do, generally speaking, in these situations.
Yeah. And I would say, as an employee, like, let's just think of it from an employer perspective. If I'm looking for someone who's going to show up, do the work, probably high quality work, like that's what I'm looking for, and they aren't willing to spend the time or the effort to even complete the application process, then I'm already making some judgments and biases against them, that this person probably isn't going to put in all the effort to do the work at the level that I'm wanting them to do it in the role. So if you're not willing to complete the application process in the way that we're asking you to do it, then that
doesn't bode well. Yeah.
Right.
We got some other interesting questions here.
Yeah.
I'm not on TikTok. Someone's wondering, are you on TikTok?
No, I'm not on TikTok, and I'm in the US. So TikTok has been banned in the US.
Oh, okay.
There are ways to get around it, but I'm not willing to do that. I'm the millennial generation who's more interested in Instagram. So I am on Instagram, just not on TikTok.
We have here, should I pay for the upgraded LinkedIn? Well, it depends what you want to do. Like, it depends what your goal is.
Yeah.
What would you say to that, Abby?
No, don't pay for it. No, and granted, I don't pay for it. So I'm not, drinking the Kool-Aid to say that we should be paying for it. But I find that the benefits to it is if you're going to be sending a lot of messages to people that you're not connected to, and you want that first message to go beyond the minimum character count that you're allowed. Now, I would say if you're going to be connecting with someone, you should send a relatively short but personalized message to them. And if they connect with you, then you have unlimited characters that you can send anyway in those messages between people. There are some other benefits to having the paid version of LinkedIn. I think you have access to LinkedIn Learning. So you might be able to complete some self-paced, self-directed learning that could supplement your, certifications or something like that through the platform. There's some other benefits to LinkedIn Premium, but I don't pay for it. And I don't recommend people do unless they have a specific goal of connecting with people with that first message with a bunch of characters, or they're going to be using everything that LinkedIn has to offer.
Yeah, the one thing for me that it would be useful for is if you are doing people searches, it allows you, or at least it did like 5 years ago, last time I had a paid account, was it allows you to get search results for the individuals that show up in the results. They don't have to be in your network to show up in the result. Normally, you could do a people search, but the only people that will show up in the results are people that are like a first degree, second degree, or third degree connection. If you get the paid account, at least the way it used to work, was people that you're not connected to at all, they will show up in the search results. So that's a great way to discover new people that, they're outside of your network. Like now, but that's a very specific sort of usage case. If you were using it to get informational interviews and stuff like that, like I was, then it might make sense. But I would not pay for it for any of the other features that I believe they offer. Like they're all kind of non-essential. They're all kind of fluff. And like Abby a moment ago was talking about connecting to people or sending messages to people that you're not connected to. Even that for myself, that wouldn't be a motivator, because I don't want to connect to people, or I don't want to interact with people that can't even accept a connection request for me. Like
Right.
I would sort of vet them by saying, are you there? Are you willing to connect to me? And then if they say yes, then I might send them a more complex message. Do you want to meet, or can I ask you a question, or something like that? But if they can't even connect with you, then I don't expect to get much more out of them. You know what I mean? So it kind of negates the whole point of sending them a big message,
Yep. And if I'm going to connect with someone, I will, if someone sends me a connection request, I actually do look at their headline that comes through. And if they send me a message, I look at it. And if it feels very generic and vague and like they put zero effort into it, then I usually reject them. And if I'm going to connect with someone, I'm also making sure that they're not trying to sell me something right off the bat. Like I'm wanting to connect with someone who genuinely wants to connect for any variety of reasons, more than just using me as a potential client or, mass connecting with anyone they can. So you want to put some effort into it. ChatGPT, generative AI programs are a great way to get a draft message that you can then tweak to really fit the person that you're trying to connect with. But yeah, I don't pay for it. I don't usually recommend people do.
We have this here. I've been searching for a job 2 months. I can't get unemployment. I was fired after 4 days of work, and my state is what? At will state. You know what that is, Abby? I don't know what I should do to get a job. My job history is, and I guess it continues. What's this? Long. What do I do?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So I mean, beyond just a generic sort of job advice, do you have any insight on this, like at will state? I don't even know what that is.
Yeah. So in the United States, they have states that are considered at will, like states that have at will employment, which means they can fire you for any reason at any time, especially if you're in the probation period. Yeah. And it's kind of blurry. It's not very clear. So I would double check to make sure that this person actually isn't qualified for unemployment. Because they may still be qualified for employment. There's no harm in applying for it and seeing if you get rejected or not, because it will go to the employer and they're going to have to justify why you're not going to be eligible for it. The other thing is if you're fired after 4 days of work and you don't really know why or what happened, that's another thing that you could follow up on. if you're in probationary status, if you are at an at-will state, there are some of these like weird things that go into it. A lot of times they might tell you that you're not going to be eligible for unemployment, and that all these things will happen, but that's just them trying to prevent you from accessing the resources that you're entitled to as a employee. So I double check those two things. If you're actually not eligible for unemployment, like truly not eligible. And then also the reasoning for being fired, because it just seems like that's something that shouldn't happen. You may need to consult a employment lawyer, someone who is very well versed in employment law. I am not one of those people. So that might be another step. You might be able to get like a free consultation with someone to kind of explain the situation. They can give you some insights. But what I would do is it really depends on your financial situation. If you're in a place where you need money to survive, you need money to pay for groceries, for rent, for utilities, those basic survival things, then take the first job you can find to just tide you over in this really difficult time. Whether it's, go ahead.
No, I didn't want to interrupt your flow there, but I was just going to say, I mean, just keep in mind, I mean, maybe you already know this already, maybe you don't, but there's many different ways of applying for jobs. And sometimes, you know, there can be situations where a more immediate method is to show up in person. Now, on the low level that I think most people could picture, if you've never thought of this before, it's like, there's a lot of stores like mom and pop stores. They'll just put like a help wanted sign in the window kind of thing. You know, I mean, that's an extreme example of like, you know, the job won't be posted on Indeed, but it exists. But you see the sign, you show up in person, bring your resume down with you. And those are actually a lot simpler than you would think, because the way it would normally work, even if you're going after a professional job, okay, you would march through the front doors of the organization, like their main door, and then you'd get to some kind of reception desk of some kind. And that's going to be the gatekeeper. Like they're going to stop you right there. And all you do is you say, would I be able to speak to, like if you work in a certain department, like, I don't know, say you're an architect or something, and you're walking through the front doors of a big company and they do many things, but they might have an architect department, you know, so you say, can I talk to the manager in charge of the architecture department, you know, or something like that. If you don't know anything about them, you don't know the individual, you don't know what the role is or anything, and you just say that. Now, 90% of the time, they're going to say, no, that person is not available right this second, you know, and which case that's fine. You say, okay, great. Listen, that's not a problem. Now, if I leave this here for them, like your resume or an envelope or something like that, can you see that they get it? Is that okay? You know, and 90% of the time, the receptionist will say, sure, you know. So while you're there, now, if you can get the name, at least, of the person, you know, you say, like, could I ask what their name is, that individual? They'll probably tell you their name. Okay. That's not always the case. It might be more of a paranoid type company, and they won't, but it's not essential. All you're doing is saying, like, listen, if I leave this here, would you see that they get that? And they say, sure. It's like, okay, great. Thank you. You have yourself a great day. Okay. And then you leave. That's all you have to do. You don't have to do anything more. You don't have to force yourself on anyone. You don't have to create a ton of awkwardness by demanding anything. That's all you do. Now you have a reason to follow up. So what you would do then is you would follow up with a phone call. Now, if you're absolutely paranoid or fearful of talking to anyone on the phone, you could do this after hours and just leave a voicemail. And all you do is you say, look, my name is X. I'm following up. I left envelope or my resume at the front desk. I'm just following up to see if you received it. I just wanted to let you know that, I'm great at this. I have these skills. I solve this problem. And if ever you're looking for someone who can do that to join your team, I would love to work for you. I just wanted to let you know that. Thank you and have yourself a great day. My phone number is this. If ever you have any questions other than that, take care of yourself. You know, something like that. And you can do this. You can do this to companies that are immediately around you. And a lot of them, just playing the odds, they won't be hiring right now. Okay, so they don't have a problem with you, just that they're not looking for a new employee right now. But statistically, some of them will be. It could be 1%, it could be 5%. So, if you do this to some that are indicating that they are looking for help, like they have an ad up on the internet or something, so you know that they're probably looking. And then instead of applying through the internet, you do this, it's a great way to elevate yourself above the crowd, and stand out and show that you're the only person of all the candidates that was enthusiastic and had the initiative enough to do this. And that really separates you. They've already got a sample of what you're like to deal with as a person, how professional you are. They can ask the receptionist, like, what was this person like? Did they have great communication skills? The receptionist says, yeah, they seemed really nice enough, it was easy talking to them. You know what I mean? You've already left a message for them, so they get a sample of your communication skills, and how you can persuade them to do something. So this is all stuff that all the people that might have applied online and just sent in a resume, they haven't demonstrated yet, but you have. So you have an edge over all those people. So this is one example of like different ways of getting jobs. So if you're really desperate, you need something very soon, and you're just limiting yourself to applying online, just try and be open about other methods of getting a job and look into this stuff, do your own research on it, and try some of these methods too, because they might be the thing that gets you hired.
Well, and applying online to jobs is the most passive way to get a job. So take a more active role. Figure out exactly what organizations you want to work with. Show up there in person. Try to go to some of their events. Connect with people on LinkedIn. Like, there's all these things that you can do that's way more active when it comes to applying for jobs. I think the other aspect of this person's question was they have a long job history and they're not quite sure what to do about that either. So you can create what's called a tailored resume, and that's tailored to the job or the type of role that you're wanting to do. Just showing up in person saying, do you have any jobs available, is not necessarily with the place where you would need a tailored resume. That's maybe more of a generic resume, but it might be like a customer service based resume. You want to create a tailored resume if you are applying to specific types of jobs, and you can only, in that case, you can include relevant information. So I might have 25 years of experience working with 15 different organizations, but only 3 of those jobs in the last 10 years are very relevant to the job that I want to apply to. So include only the information that's relevant on your resume. And that's a good way to really trim it down, make it 1 page, maybe 2 pages max, and only highlight the things that are the most relevant and recent to really showcase your skills. Having a lot of different jobs in the past isn't necessarily a red flag, especially if there are a lot of different types of jobs. It could show growth and development and all these other things. But you want to give yourself the biggest opportunity, which is you want to make it as easy as possible for the person looking at your resume to determine that you're a good fit for the role and the organization. And you do that through tailoring and having it clear and concise as to why you're going to be the best fit for a position.
Definitely. I agree with that too. Okay, we have this one here. Do recruiters like career pivoters? I would say not. I think hiring managers are a lot more open to that, but recruiters probably not.
Yeah, and I would say at that initial step, there's going to be a lot of skepticism. They're probably, they have to do a quick analysis of everyone who's applied. They have to determine if you're a fit or not a fit. And so I would say people who have no experience in this role and are pivoting into this type of industry are probably going to be scrutinized a little bit more heavily. So it will be your job as an applicant to really demonstrate how you're a good fit for the role, to really highlight your transferable skills, highlight relevant education, certifications, etc. But I would say that there's still this bias among people who are doing hiring when it comes to people who are pivoting industries or careers. They have lots of questions. They're wondering, like, what does this person not like about this role? They see that they're hopping these jobs really frequently. Is this person a problem person? Like, what are they not happy with? So there's a lot of like negative based questions that come to mind. I would hope that they would get over that and would give people equal opportunity to apply to jobs and be considered for the roles. But I would say that if you are a career pivoter, you're going to have to be much more strategic and direct about the value you're able to provide to the company and to the position than someone who has experience in the role that you're applying to.
Yeah, my personal take on this is that I think that recruiters, by definition, the way they're trained, the way some of these theories are taught, is that they do, like if you're changing careers, you're going to be at an incredible disadvantage going to a recruiter. Like anyone that places value on years of experience as a metric, because by definition you will have 0 years experience in your new career, right? Because you've never done it before. You're changing into that career, right? So or already right off the bat, that puts you at a disadvantage for people that like are comparing candidates by looking at things like years of experience. So you change careers, in my opinion, mainly by talking to hiring managers and doing networking. People will give you a chance because they see that you're awesome. They see that, they can talk shop with you and you know your stuff. So even if you've never actually been in the role, you know a lot about it. And you have all the soft skills that would be required to do that. And you have the enthusiasm that, would give you all kinds of advantages. You would be suited to it. You would want to learn about it very quickly, things like this. So, that's how you sort of put yourself forward for it, in my opinion, instead of going through the more standard HR process where they put you on a level playing field with every other candidate. And they look at sort of easy to measure things like years of experience. How long have you done this job? Oh, you had never done it before. Okay, well, you're up against someone who's been doing it for 15 years. So who would you pick? You know what I mean? So that's my personal take on it. I know that that's not how everyone does it, but I know that's how some people do it.
Yes. And I just put in the chat a link to the live stream that you and I, Bill, did on transferable skills. That's over an hour of just us kind of chatting about how to handle this type of situation, highlighting your transferable skills, even if it's in roles that were not necessarily relevant to the job that you're applying to now. There's probably skills that you use that are relevant and transferable. And then I also linked to a video that I've made about transferable skills too. That's much shorter than the hour-long live stream. But those are good resources if you are a career pivoter, because you'll likely have to rely on those transferable skills to really demonstrate your employment history and how it's relevant to the role or whatever you're applying to. That's a pivot.
Yeah, we've got this other one here. Millennial friend says, helpful to know. Thank you for the employment insight. Thank you. Okay, what for the advice on going to independent employers? It at least gives me reassurance that I'm not in a loop of roadblocks. Okay. I don't fully understand that, to be honest with you, but
I think they're just saying thanks for the insight.
Yeah.
For both of those aspects. Yeah.
We do have this other one here. Let's see here. Okay. Mike says, do you have any questions? You ask if you see if a company is toxic, interviewing for a job where the Glassdoor reviews are not good, lots of turnover, but intriguing startup with employees who seem passionate. No, there are, as far as I'm concerned, there's no questions you could ask because they will, like, unless they're a bunch of complete idiots, they will be able to obfuscate that pretty simply. They'll say all the right things. And, it's based on what people say in an interview. There's no evidence, right? Unless their behavior is evidence of anything. Like if they get upset with you for even asking a question like that and they start insulting you or something, I mean, then obviously that tends to suggest that the company is toxic. But barring things like that, I don't think there's anything you can ask because they'll just give you the right answer no matter what you say.
Yeah, well, and I think it also comes down to your observation of their body language and their nonverbals. So, like, let's say that I had a client who I was working with, and they experienced this during an interview. They asked a question that was somewhat about culture, why they were hiring for this position, what challenges they might be expecting in the future. And the Brady Bunch on their screen kind of like all went quiet and like did side eyes to each of the different like images on the screen. And then one person was like, I'll answer that question, and was kind of tentative about it. So there's some nonverbal things that you might be able to pick up on that could indicate if they're going to be honest or not, or if it's kind of a touchy subject. I would say there's not a specific question that you could ask that would guarantee you would know if the company is toxic or not. But there are questions that you can kind of get to the heart of the issue. Like, tell me about a time that you had to provide difficult feedback to one of your employees. Can you share with me how you went about it, how the employee took it, and, how the situation was resolved? That is something that I might ask a potential manager that would be my future manager to get an idea of how they might approach giving feedback. You might also want to ask why this position is vacant. Maybe it's a new position. Maybe it is a position with high turnover. Wanting to kind of get to the heart of that, asking hard or hesitation questions like, what do you think my biggest challenge might be in this role if I were to step into it? Those sorts of questions are not directly asking about the culture, but the responses that you're going to get will give you some insight into how toxic or not toxic it is. Some cases you just can't avoid it. The organization might be toxic to its core. The employees might just be surviving, and you're not going to know that until you're in the situation.
I mean, you also have your experience dealing with them. So, I mean, if you're going down for a physical job interview, how have you been treated? And it starts with kind of benign, subtle things like, how, like, what was the parking lot like? Did they make you park like 3 miles away from the building, and so that it's all reserved for all their managers right up close? Or, when they came in, were they polite? Were they friendly? If they're very gruff and they treat you like a number and they treat you like cattle, I mean, that doesn't bode well. It might be kind of strange if they're all they look really disgruntled or paranoid or something like that, and they're not treating you very well. But then they usher you into the room for the job interview, and then the person is all, smiles and chuckles. And, I mean, there could be, if it seems like a disconnect, they don't offer to take your coat. They don't offer to give you a drink. They kind of just sort of speak very harshly to you. Obviously stuff like that can obviously tell a story. I did a video on my channel a long time ago, like a couple of years ago at least, and I can't remember what it was called, but it was bright green. I don't know if that helps, but it was something along the lines of like external signs of a bad company. And it was just stuff I'd noticed just in my experience. Companies that have, what do you call it? Like those like sort of two-way mirrors that they instead of just having glass, like an office building, they'll have the two-way mirror. So it's like a complete mirror on the outside, but they can see out. Obviously these things that you can't use them as some kind of ironclad rule, but they're just slightly suggestive. Companies where they don't want you looking in and seeing who's in there and who's working there and what are they doing. There's been companies that have like a lot of the public mad at them because they've, provided bad experiences to customers. And so when that happens, and it's been going on for years, there's certain external signs that they do. They kind of keep the public very far away. They don't like to reveal where the boss's car is parked for fear that the tires might be slashed or something. Like there's all kinds of subtle things like that that can be signals of how they run stuff internally. So I did a video on that. I can't remember a lot of the details of that stuff right now, but I did do a video on that. So check out my channel, do a search for like external signs of bad companies. Maybe that can help you with that.
Well, and this person also put just further down in the chat a couple of clarifications. So one of them was, I'm hesitant about the company also because of how quickly the interview/interest in offer process has gone. The last few times this has happened to me, my spidey senses have gone off that something was wrong. Hearing about the role and the decisions I make could influence whether or not the company survives this. And there's this all hands on deck kind of mentality. So I would say your intuition and your gut is probably tapping into something with this situation. So the question is that something that you want to put yourself in? If you say, yes, I want this job, the money is good, the compensation is good, it's going to be a great opportunity for me to build my career, then know that you're probably going to have to set some boundaries and have some frank conversations with people in this kind of hiring and then initial part of your job process. It isn't impossible to survive these types of situations. And maybe they're in a really rough patch. Maybe they're getting new leadership and they're trying new things and they're like trying to turn over this leaf to get, into a better place. It might be worth it. If those spidey senses really are tingling and it's just kind of nagging at you that this is going to be the wrong choice for you, then decline. It's okay to do that too.
Yeah. And it also comes down to what your personal philosophy is regarding this stuff, because you see, anytime you take another job, there's always risk involved. For a start, there could be risk that the offer is rescinded. You quit the job that you have, and then you start at this other job, and then 2 weeks in, they let you go. And I'm sorry, we thought we had money in the budget, but the business is taking a turn, and we have to lay you off. So there's always risk involved. So therefore, all things being equal, you should have a pay premium that compensates you for that risk. Now, if you're getting a lot of these weird signals and there's no real way to verify them, you've tried your best to do your due diligence and try and corroborate, like some of the things that you might have heard online. Is that the truth, or is that just noise? Is that just people talking? One thing you can use LinkedIn for is you can do a people search in your hometown for people who are former employees of that organization and reach out to them and say, can I give you a phone call? I may be taking a job with this company. I'm not sure, but I've heard some weird things about them. I'd very much like to just ask you what your experiences were with them, if you're comfortable in sharing that. Like even stuff like that you can do to try and get some, more info. At the end of the day, there's no guarantee. It's always going to be incomplete information that you have to just make a decision on. And the way some people do it is they say, okay, this is more risky, so therefore I'm going to ask for a bigger bump in compensation. So that, I'm taking more of a risk with this. So I'm sorry, I'm going to need another 10 grand. Now, if you can't do that, then it doesn't make sense. Why would I switch jobs just to make another like pittance, premium and jump into something that could be bad, but if you're willing to pay me an extra 10 grand, to do essentially the same job, then maybe I can justify it to myself. So there's different ways of looking at it. It depends, what your situation is and how you feel about this.
Well, and, let's say they offer you the job, and there might be an option for you to ask if you could sit in on some meetings. If it's a completely remote or hybrid role, but there's like weekly team meetings, then maybe you can sit in on a team meeting before you fully or formally accept the offer. Maybe if it's an in-person role, you can ask to come get a tour of the facility before you make your choice. And you can like observe how people are showing up in this situation. If it's in person, you can see like, is it really people running around like chickens with their heads cut off? Are they like sweating bullets all the time? If it's a virtual meeting and you are listening in, does it seem like people are like tiptoeing and walking on eggshells? Or does it seem like they've got a really great relationship and they're all in this together? So there's maybe some things that you can do to help give yourself more data to feel like you're making a more informed choice with less risk.
That's a good point. And for me personally, I would ask that during the offer stage. So if you don't even get an offer, none of this matters. But if you do get to the point where they give you a job offer, you can, assuming that you're okay with it, you just sort of agree to their conditions, and the pay is fine, the vacation's fine, the benefits are fine, blah, 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 but I'm going to need this. I'm going to need, I respect that you bring me in for an interview, bring me in, allow me to sit in on a, production meeting or, whatever it is, give me a tour of the facility, beforehand. That's one of my conditions. And if that checks out, then I'll be happy to sign this and return it and start on whatever day, something like that. That's how I would probably weave that in at the offer stage.
Yep. And it's really just like, I want to make sure that this is just as good of a fit for me as it is for you. So I'd love it if I could sit in on, the next team meeting or come get a tour of the facility, just so, I know I have enough information to make sure that this is the right decision for both parties.
That's a very nice diplomatic phrase that you can throw in there. That's really good, Abby.
Right here, all about diplomacy and niceties and all things.
Yeah, exactly. It's like way to demand something, but it sounds like, we're all in this together and, we all want the same thing. In the end, we want what's best for the company. So in that sense, we agree, that kind of thing. We got quite a few comments here, so let's just keep going here. Yeah. Robert says, sorry if this... Yeah. Robert says, sorry if this was already addressed. Please point me to what? Print and video.
Maybe the point in the video.
I get interviews, second round interviews, ask for references, but people tell me I don't have enough experience. I think that sounds, what do you think, Abby? That sounds like a kiss off, saying that at that phase.
Yep. And it's, this person then clarified that they're switching from civil litigation, I think, to family law. So they're green in the area of family law, but really well versed in the area of civil litigation. Gotten 2 job offers. Sounds like maybe you've gotten the 2 job offers, but they haven't been what you're looking for. You want to go somewhere good. The employers had red flags who made the job offers. What does not enough experience mean? And how can I find a good employer who wants to train me? So I would say there's multiple responses to this string of consciousness thoughts that came through. The first is, when it comes to law, there's a lot of transferable skills, regardless of which specialty you are in. So you want to focus on those things. If you know that you're wanting to switch from civil litigation to family law, then maybe you find a mentor for yourself, someone who you respect, who has been successful in the world of family law, to kind of take you under their wing, share some of the things they've learned, give you some, real world this is what to expect in this type of role, that you can then start to integrate into your interview process. If you've gotten 2 offers, but there are red flags and you've decided to turn those down, keep those in mind as you move forward. I know that working as an attorney, I don't have personal experience working as an attorney, but the attorneys that I know personally and that I've worked with as clients, that the world can be very shaky when you're in this phase. It's a lot of hours, a lot of clients who are demanding a lot from you. So if you have that kind of set straight and you're able to communicate that you're able to put up with those demands during the interview process, then that's something that would be helpful too. Not enough experience after they've gone through the whole process of interviewing you, checking your references, and then they decide not to move forward with you. That's where I would then send a personalized email to some of the decision makers in the interview process that I've met thus far and request specific feedback from them. It may literally be that you came across that you don't have enough experience with family law to be able to move forward into this role. They're probably looking for someone who can jump in and hit the ground running with their own caseload and clients and things like that.
Would you copy all of them on this, or you send it to the individual people?
Yeah, I would send it to individual people.
Yeah.
It could be the exact same email, but it feels a little bit safer to have a one-on-one conversation.
But it also could result in they're ignorant of the fact that another person might have given feedback. So you're maybe getting different things that they're saying, so that might be interesting.
Well, and you can also be transparent. I'm reaching out because I wanted to get your feedback on my interviews. I was given the feedback that I don't have enough experience, and I just wanted to know, your thoughts on that. What are some areas that I can focus on to improve my experience, etc. And then you can say, I've requested this feedback from these 3 people that I met in the interview process. So I am really looking to grow into this role, and I'm excited and enthusiastic about this change. All of those niceties and positive things you can put about it, but really attempt to request their feedback.
I just want to say, for me personally, if I didn't think I would ever interact with these people again, it's not like you're going to be constantly dealing with them in the future, I would do it independently just to see if you could play one off against the other. Somebody says, no, I don't give feedback. The other person says, well, here's full and complete details of what we all thought of you. And another person gives you the sort of kiss off, well, we just felt you need more experience. I would do that on the off chance that you could maybe get some additional insight, rather than saying I'm canvassing everyone so that you guys all confer with each other before you respond. Just personally, I think I would do that.
Well, and I'm going into my Amazon really quick, and I'm finding the link to 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, because I think this book might be relevant to this person. So this is one of my most favorite books. I recommend it to almost everyone that I meet. And I'm trying to get the link right now. This is just an affiliate link to the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. One of the things that you mentioned was I was promised by the owner that they would train me, and then they didn't train me. So with 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, we have to take control over the things that are within our control, and other people are not within our control. So if the owner promises to train you and then they don't, then what do you have control over? Well, you have control over maybe some of the, your relationship with the other lawyers in the practice who have areas of expertise in family law. Understanding them, you have the ability to join a professional affiliation or professional association that is in the specific area of family law and connecting to people there. You can take additional trainings and certifications. Maybe you become a mediator and you take mediation training and conflict resolution, all those things. So what is within your control when it comes to these things? The toxic work environment, you said that you had, 4 toxic experiences. That is, I'm not surprised by that. It seems like a lot of organizations can be that way. Again, I've never worked as a lawyer, but I've heard the stereotype of what it's like to work as a lawyer. It's high demand, lots of stress, cutthroat, all these things. So I'm not surprised to hear that it was toxic work environment. So if you're really wanting to find a place that's the right fit for you, then you do want to be intentional about your search. And I think starting with the things that you can control through this proactive mindset, habit 1 of 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, I would highly recommend starting with that book and seeing what paradigms you can shift. Where can you say, these are the things that I need to do that's within my control to help me move forward in my career, rather than focusing on the other people and the bad work environments and all of those things. So I would say, as a whole, kind of closing this loop about this specific conversation. If you don't have enough experience, that's what they're saying. Ask for feedback. If they don't give it to you, continue to move on, and then figure out what's within your control to get yourself to the place that you want to go. Maybe it's sitting in on or shadowing a lawyer who's doing what you want to do. Maybe it's attending specific trials so you can learn more about the process. Maybe it's connecting with a magistrate or a judge who's in your system to, learn their secrets or see if they have anyone that they would recommend who's like a super kick-ass family law person. So what's within your control, and do those things.
Yeah. As an aside, Abby is absolutely right about that. You can't control other people, but you can control your response, So if someone's going to do this, okay, that's fine. You can go ahead and do that, but here's what I'm going to do in response. That's understanding that really helps frame, what power you have. How we're at an hour. How much long can you go for? Can you go for like another 15 minutes, half an hour, Abby?
Let's take about 10 minutes. Start to wrap some of these up. I see lots of good comments coming
in 10 minutes. Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Let's see. Let's continue on with this. And how can I find a good employer that wants to train? That's tougher. Because there's been a reaction against training. Yeah. It's a big, long story, but we saw that in the last 10 years, employers are less and less likely to want to train people. They're wanting a more turnkey employee.
And I asked that question during the interview. Tell me about the training process. Are there any mentoring opportunities? If I feel like I need a little bit more support in a certain area, how do I go about finding that or accessing those resources? Just asking those types of questions during the interview process will give you some insight into their mentality around training.
Yeah, I wouldn't personally, I wouldn't push it too hard. That's my own opinion on that. It's like, because once again, you're signaling, I want to get as much as I possibly can out of this, as opposed to signaling, I'm a team player. I want to help the team succeed and all this kind of stuff. I mean, it's really a judgment call, but yeah, that's hard. That's a tough one. What do we got here? Thanks for answering. I realize why part of why I'm asking is either to validate my initial feeling or to hear that I'm looking at it the wrong way, hopes of making a decision. Okay. That's okay. That's not a problem. Jedi Mind One says, I observe facial expressions, responses during an online interview. How much of what I respond or personal feeling about the candidate is noted towards a second interview? Some people are more emotionally intelligent than others. Like if you have a real talent for that kind of stuff, to be able to read a person's thoughts with like increasing like a higher level of complexity by looking at their body language, that definitely has a lot of uses. But then again, you do get people who are your counterpoint on the other side of the table that have more of a poker face, and they've done many of these types of interviews before. So they know exactly what countermeasures to use to like not reveal things that they don't want revealed. So at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter. You give it your best shot. And if they respond, great. If they don't respond, oh, well, you keep moving, Yep.
And I would say that the connection you make with the interviewer is one of the most important things when it comes to the actual interview. Because if you are getting an interview, then it's been determined that you likely meet the qualifications to do the role. Now they're going to find someone who's the right fit for the role. So the way that you engage with them or not engage with them is going to determine your fate. So if you are not engaging in conversation, if you're super monotone and robotic with your responses, those types of nonverbals will impact your chances moving forward. Now, you might have an interviewer who's looking for that very monotone, lack of response, lack of connection type of thing. So if you're boisterous and you talk with your hands like I do, and you have lots of facial expressions, then that might be not the best fit for that person making the decision. So I would say that the connection you're able to make with the interviewer determines your chances to move forward to the next round or the hiring stage of the interview.
And I believe, Abby, you've got a background in this kind of thing, right? So I know you can speak to these types of questions probably with a lot of insight. These might be topics for other future live streams where you can like open up these kind of discussions, because there's a lot of psychology involved in this kind of stuff. I mean, it's an exchange with people. It's a highly artificial exchange. It's almost like playing poker. Someone wants to get at what you're hiding, and you are trying your best to hide this thing from them, and or to give one impression when reality might be different. There's a lot of psychology involved, and I know for people like me that are technical introverts, a lot of this, it goes completely over our heads. We don't understand what's happening, and then that can contribute to us not understanding the result, because there was this whole thing going on in the interview of which we were ignorant, and they based their assessment of us based on things we weren't even tuned into. So, it's a good learning opportunity for people like if you're like me, that this is not your natural kind of thing or your strong suit.
And it's the reason why people are like, why can't I just be hired for my qualifications?
Yeah.
Like I can do the job. Just hire me to do the job. But it's like it's like dating, any relationship. Like you got to play the part. And so what part do you play?
I always think that it's like, in a perfect world, probably the biggest thing to help candidates understand what's going on in a job interview and how it works and why it works that way is if you've ever had to interview someone yourself. Like if you ever just, like I need someone, the example I always use is I need someone to help me move my stuff from like one apartment to another or something. I can't do it all myself. There's a lot of furniture. I don't know anyone. I'm in a new city, whatever. So I'm going to like hire someone just to help me for the day to like move furniture. But I got to trust them with my stuff. Now you interview, say 6 people, like, how would you do it? And like, if you've ever been in that situation, it's so enlightening as to why this process of job interviewing works a certain way, and why people can't just say like that question you guys just brought up, like, why can't people just hire me for my qualifications? Look, I've helped people move before, right? Maybe that's not the issue. The issue is that like, well, I don't know if I trust you with like my personal belongings when my back is turned, like, it really reveals like what's important and why the process takes a certain shape. So yes. I don't know if there's any way to artificially give people that learning, if there's any kind of exercise they could do, if there was, it would probably be very useful.
Yeah. Well, and it comes down to reading the room, like if I am stepping in and I've got this like boisterous, charismatic personality, but the person on the other end is very like flat affect, not super engaging. I need to be able to read that and dial it back a little bit. If I am too over the top for that person, they're going to say this person is not a good fit for this role. And then the other side of the coin is if the person I'm talking to is trying their best to engage with me through the computer screen or through the table that we're, sitting at, and I am sitting there still with no facial expressions, I'm not using my hands, I'm talking in a very monotone voice, then they're going to say this person isn't the best fit for me. So we've got to mirror what the other person is doing. And it takes a lot of practice. And so if you're not really great at it, then maybe you kind of act as a fly on the wall at like large events and you watch people, networking and stuff like that. And you start to pick up on some of those traits, but it's not something that people are just inherently born with. It's something that we learn over time. And there are some people who are maybe a little bit more like, I guess, I don't even know the word I'm looking for, but people are a little bit more inherently charismatic, or people are a little bit more inherently cold or cool. We just got to figure out how to recognize that in ourselves, and then what we can do to turn it on one way or another.
I don't know if it's poor form to do this in public, but I would suggest that we make this like the title of a future live stream where we go into more of the psychology of this, because certainly with interviewing, that's where a lot of the stuff applies. And I know there's a lot of people out there that need help with this. Like you think the interview is about one thing when really you're being assessed on this completely other thing that doesn't even enter your mind. You think it's about qualifications and education. Really, it's about them not believing what you're saying about yourself, and they're trying to decide if you're lying or not. You know what I mean? There's like a lot of things going on in these type of exchanges. So maybe we could talk about more of this in the future.
I think we should.
Yeah. And I traditionally haven't done a lot of that. I'd be interested to hear some of your insights on these topics. Let's see if we can just quickly wrap up some of these questions. We've got a lot of sort of comments here. Robert Coleman has been talking about his experiences. Let's see here. Is there a question at the end of it? Understood that I've been out of family law for 4 years. There's a lack of work. If you have a question, Robert Coleman, ask it now, that we could help you with something. Mike
Well, I think
says,
there's like a four-part comment that came through from Mike, and essentially, I'll give a summary of it. This person was in a job. They then, got switched to a new manager. They got lots of high ratings on their last performance review, but when they got switched to this new manager, then they were requesting like daily updates on what they were working on, which felt weird, especially because the end of year review had just been really well or gone really well. So it seems like they would have been on the same page about what this person was doing and all the things that were going on. But then they ended up getting let go. And essentially he's saying, like, I realized I probably should have asked about what was going on, if there was something I shouldn't do, or if I wasn't doing something correctly. This comes down to managing up, which is another like psychological thing. So when we think about our managers or anyone who's managing, I believe, and don't quote me on this, but I believe the research says that in order to be an effective manager of people, you should be managing no more than 4 people at a time. Now, I don't know any managers who are really managing 4 people or less. Most of them have a lot of other people who fall under them and are also working managers. So they've got a lot on their plate. They might also be a micromanager, which adds even more to their plate. And it sounds like this person was, if they're wanting daily updates on what you're working on. So it's our role as an employee to manage our manager, which sounds backwards. But our manager probably isn't going to change to meet our preferences, because they would not be able to do that for 12 or 30 or 50 people that they're managing. So we need to understand what their needs are, what their wants are, their motives, the things that are a little bit more like the psychological thing about this person, and cater to that. And it might mean just buckling down and sending the daily updates about what we're working on. It might be having a conversation with them. I've noticed that you want me to send you daily updates about what I'm working on. I haven't done that in the past. So I just want to be really clear about what it is that you're looking for from me, so that I can make sure that I'm providing you the information that is most relevant to you, something like that. So there's a lot of ways to go about it. I actually facilitate a training that's 3.5 hours on the concept of managing up. So like, this is a legit topic that takes a lot of intentionality as well, but you've got to learn your manager's style and preferences and then match it. And if you have like a hard boundary that's like being crossed, or it's really triggering to you that you need to like try to get some wiggle room from your manager, you need to let them know rather than just like holding it in and not doing anything about it. But you got to manage your manager in addition to doing your daily job. And in most cases, I would say people experience this. There's not a lot of cases where people are like, the numbers all add up and we have the capacity to do all the things that we're doing. We're usually overworked and have way too much on our plate to manage these sorts of things. But if you want a good relationship with your manager, managing up is the key.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Check out Abby's. You got training on this type of thing. What's the form of it? Is it like a lecture or a course or?
Yeah, so it's for organizations. So I usually get like contracted with organizations to provide this type of training to their employees. And so I don't have anything like for an individual to take, but maybe it's something I could make. I could certainly do an online course, I bet, or an online offering to people. But it is 3.5 hours on the topic of managing up. It's learning your styles and your manager's styles, and then also how to have a conversation about the differences in those and what you need and what you want and what you think your manager wants and needs, to make sure you're both on the same page and make it as easy of a relationship to manage as possible.
Definitely. We unfortunately have to wrap this up in like a couple of minutes, and we've gotten a lot of questions and comments here that are just unfortunately not possible to respond to in just a few minutes. Before we sign off, I just did want to return to the original topic of this live stream, which is why you didn't get the job, what they won't tell you. I just want to say that for most people, why you didn't get the job is simply, first, I would say the most common reason is that what's the average amount of people that apply to a job these days? It's like 200, 300, something like that. They have one vacancy. They have 300 applicants. 299 of them are going away with a no. It has nothing to do with the fact that you weren't qualified enough. Out of 300 candidates, you certainly usually can find like 8 that are all completely, fully qualified for the role. And how you decide in between them, it comes down to a lot of hocus pocus kind of personal preferences. Sometimes a lot of it are decision by committee. A lot of them are politically driven decisions, things you have no control over, and you will never find out the inner workings of. So it's essentially just random chance. That's the number one reason why you didn't get the job. Don't interpret a no as some kind of validation of the fact that you're no good. A lot of people, we can't help but do this. We get rejected, we applied for something, and then we interpret it as, oh, I just wasn't good enough. I'm not qualified enough. I'm not good enough. That is an illusion. That's how it feels, but that is not reflective of reality in the vast majority of situations. So I just wanted to throw that out. That's the most common reason why you would get a no for most jobs that you apply to.
Yep, there's a lot of things at play. And there was one person who was asking about, they're kind of sharing their experience with applying to jobs and switching industries and things like that. So I believe it's Umi. So I've pasted several videos in the chat, several links to videos on transferable skills, and then also how to handle age discrimination and bias. So check those out if you haven't already. And Bill and do we have a live stream set up for next time? If not, it's going to be in a couple weeks. So jump on.
We're gonna probably presumably schedule that coming up. But we will be back at some point, probably in 2 weeks, I imagine, from right now. The one thing that Abby said earlier that I want to return to is, I just finished saying that the number one reason why you were rejected was no fault of yours. It's just random probability. But Abby brought up a point earlier, which was that, if you're getting nothing and you're like putting out a lot of stuff, you're applying to a lot of jobs, you're reaching out to a lot of people with networking or whatever, and you're just not getting any bites whatsoever, there is a chance that there could be something wrong with what you're doing. Maybe there's something in your resume it's turning people off, or part of your process that you're doing that is not really working out. So if you have concerns over that and you are worrying that, okay, maybe I'm doing something wrong, I'm putting this thing out and unbeknownst to me, it's really signaling that I'm not the person for the role, but I can't detect that. You can maybe benefit from a career coach. I don't provide career coaching myself. I understand that Abby does. She does a lot of that. So even as I understand, just one session can help, where someone takes a look at your resume or what you do with fresh eyes, and they can give you a more objective perspective on what you're doing and make some recommendations. So check out Abby's channel for that. She does provide those services. Very, very useful. Not that it's necessarily a recurring thing, but just one session for a lot of people, I think, would be able to provide a lot of value.
Yep, it is. And I usually work with people for one session. I do offer like a 4-session package where we do like a complete overhaul of their resume and their job application strategy. And we do interview tips and coaching and all that stuff. But most people will schedule a single session with me to strategize for their interview or to go over their application materials. And I get a lot of positive feedback from people that, they may not get a job immediately because that's just the world we live in. You're going to have to apply to lots of jobs to finally get the one that's the right fit. But most of them, all of them, end up having success. And a lot of it has to do with just reframing your approach with your resume, with your interview prep, and then your actual interview execution. So I put a lot of links in the chat, the transferable skills, age discrimination, and then also a video on if you're applying online with jobs and you're not getting any responses. It usually has to do with your resume. I found that most of the time it has to do with a 2-column resume because the ATS gets confused and combines the columns because it reads your document like a book. So check that out if you are applying a lot and getting 0 or very few responses.
Awesome. So thank you to our participants today. We have 51 people here. You guys are awesome. Hopefully we helped a little bit. I'm sorry we didn't get a chance to answer everyone's questions today. We will be back in most likely 2 weeks from today. So if you have questions for Abby or myself, come back and we will be happy to help you out then. Until then, take care and we'll see you soon.
Bye, everyone. Thanks.